making your first film as a director, you often get yourself caught up going, how's it going to be received? And you're conscious of putting this film out there and what's going to be good, what's going to be like the right way to do it, all that kind of stuff. And so definitely from him, I learned like that stuff doesn't matter. Like the fun and the real purpose of it all is the making of it.
Where would you even get to watch music videos these days anyway?
YouTube's pretty much it, really.
So you got to actively go out, because like it used to be like Rage, yeah? Or even Video Hits or whatever.
Yeah, back in the day, MTV, Rage owned the market, and if you're on there, you were exploding, and that was, the be-all and end-all.
Do people still go out and come back hammered and chuck on Rage? Is that still a thing?
I don't know if you can even watch Rage anymore, can you? Is it on? I don't think it's a thing like it used to be, that's for sure. No, people probably come home and start watching TikTok.
Yeah, that's on their phones. Yeah.
YouTube, those kind of things. But yeah, it's definitely a changing thing. And like working with a lot of musicians, it's like we all just want like things that can tease a song, or like 15-second, things where you got to grab attention in the first 3-4 seconds, or you're going to lose the audience because we're all scrolling real quick on our phone, distracted by a million things. So someone's sitting down and watching like a 3-4 minute music video. You're probably only doing it if you love the band, right? This is my favorite band. They've got a new song out, so I'll watch that. But if you're a band trying to build your audience, trying to capture new people, so it's really interesting. And in a lot of ways, it's way more fun, to be honest.
Doing the short clips?
Yeah, because you can do different things. It's like it's easier to put them together, or to get more variation. And like, okay, we just need 15 seconds of something really interesting, rather than it needing to be this 4-minute thing with lots of performance and all this kind of stuff.
Remember back in the 90s where it used to be a thing like with really established artists, I'll do like those long 10-minute video clips that was like produced by high-level directors and whole production.
And the budgets, my God. They are long gone, those budgets
like a
for
Michael
music
Jackson
videos.
Clip
Oh my God. And it's like, it kind of works in both ways, in that I find there's always a push and a pull. So we're all going to this short form micro content to capture attention, but then at the same time there's the flip side of that, and people are doing things like 20-minute, half-hour documentaries about that album, and it's a really deep dive, and it's not a music video, it's about what drove the process of making the album, what it stands for, what they're trying to say. So at the same time, we have these real micro bits of content that people want to consume, but then I think we all get sick of that and want something with substance, and so we then go even longer, but it's that middle sort of ground.
It's exhausting, man. It's exhausting, just like having that short attention span. It's fine in micro doses, but if you've seen half an hour of 10-second clips, your brain's cooked.
Totally.
Yeah, like it's like you dedicated that time, that half an hour or 45 minutes to one narrative. You got one deep message out of it, but 10 seconds of just bullshit being fed into you. Oof.
And like, and most of the time, if you spend half an hour scrolling on Instagram, watching all that stuff, and someone asked you what you just watched, you probably couldn't remember anything you just saw, Like it's very short-term memory sort of stuff, which is why, again, a lot of that sort of longer form stuff is, look at Netflix and all the streamers, like artist documentaries are as big as they've ever been. Mm-hmm. And so it's that flip side where you're like, you can really connect and get something more. I find myself longing for that kind of stuff as a consumer of content more and more, the more you get sort of brain dead from all this like blasting of short form stuff. There's
a couple of things to that. I was talking to a mate of mine that he was watching this clip or an interview with Ed Sheeran, and Ed Sheeran was explaining how he figured out how music has to work now, where he would then, when we're talking about algorithms and trying to catch attention immediately, he knows that he'll have to put the hook right at the start. Right, so it's changed the way that music has been created, the way that we consume the music. And then to that, do you know Andrew Schultz, comedian?
No.
So he is, he's relatively big, established now, when he started off, he was just on YouTube, and what he did was that he released 5-10 minute clips rather than an hour long special, because what he found is that through those clips it gave people control over how much they watched, and they end up watching more than an hour worth of clips. But with specials on Netflix, rarely do we finish that whole hour.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'll watch enough till we got our fill, but if the consumer has control, they'll end up watching more.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a strange world, and it's almost like there's the creating of the music for the music's purpose, but then it's a whole other beast. How do we then package that up? How do we get people to hear it? Not just music, it's the same for filmmaking, photography, all that kind of stuff. There's the creating process, and you try and make that as little about the audience as possible in terms of, like, I guess, how you frame it to get attention, or all of that sort of stuff. Like, doing that once you've created the main thing, I find works much stronger, because you're like, create just to create the way you want to create. Because these things are changing all the time, right? Like, TikTok could be gone in 6 months. Who knows what's next?
Well and truly could be, actually.
Yeah. So, like, it's a trap, right? If you're designing what you're making for the platform, it's a real trap.
Yeah, I believe that. Especially when there's no real transparency as to what works and what doesn't work.
Totally. And it becomes a bit more formulaic then, if you're thinking, okay, well, this is what's succeeding right now. This is how people want, things. I kind of love the people that, like, do the polar opposite to what's trending right now. Okay, so everyone's doing this. Let's do a 2-hour live concert, or let's do like a full documentary, or just flip the script. Otherwise it all becomes the same. You got
to, and that's getting that cut through, right? Like, if as an artist you want to differentiate yourself from everything out there, you got to challenge the narrative and challenge the status quo, and to start kind of seeing where the push and pull is. It's a challenge, man. I know that there's, in a sea of sameness, it's very easy to fall on the trap saying this is what people want, and then you start molding yourself, and then before you know it, you've dedicated, or you've put in so much energy into something that you don't understand. And when you're trying to create art and invest yourself in it, there's that divide. And now it's like, what's your identity? Who are you?
100%.
And it's just been diluted.
I don't know if you saw the JJ Redick interview the other day where he got announced as Lakers coach, and he referred to it as engagement farming. And I'm like, what a great terminology. He was referring to, like, the news and, media and social media, and how it's just this big farming for people's engagement.
I kind of felt part of the reason why he got the gig is because he's a notable person, and it's such a Lakers thing, right? It's such a Hollywood thing to bring on a celebrity as a coach. He knows what he's doing, right? Like, he obviously understands the game really well. He's got a unique lens on it. He's a student of the game, but it's a big risk to put him in a head coach position unless what you're trying to do is to get more eyes. Yeah, true. And like what you talked about earlier, like in that conference, they talked about one of the things him and the general manager had discussed was, how do we teach our players, develop them through modern technology, app-based teaching? So how do we get our game plan into an app-based system that they can learn in the ways that this younger generation like to learn? And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on?
But you got to do it right. And that's, like you said, he understands all that world from being in that media
He's got an
position.
established platform with his podcast and obviously with LeBron as well. So this is just, it's a media machine that they're pumping
100%.
out.
So it's not just the creative world, it's sport, it's business, it's everything.
Multi-layered.
It's super fascinating, draining, frustrating, but also exciting.
It'd be interesting to see how it goes, because it might not even be a matter of getting wins on the board. The wins on the board isn't in the wins column. It's going to be in the engagement. It's going to be in ticket sales, ticket prices. Like, if you have packed out Staples charging ridiculous amount, who cares what the win column says? Who cares? Like, you're achieving, you're accomplishing the objective. which is just driving more sales, and that's what it is.
It's an entertainment
commercial business. Yeah. It's entertainment. That's what it is. You know, like we don't view sport like how we view movies and Netflix, but it is.
Totally.
So how does this new wave of social media and the way we consume music affect how you do your job working in the music industry as a photographer and videographer?
I mean, for me, it probably makes it a lot easier because, you know, I'm a photographer and a videographer, so I do both. One of the things that I've found has been a strength for me is that, like, an artist or a label can come to me and we'll put a suite of things together, as opposed to probably back in the day, bigger budget videos, you'd need a separate crew. So I can be someone that will go on the road with an artist, make video content, make photos, and because they're all stretching their budgets, it's about quality, yes, but also they want as much bang for their buck as they can get. So it's probably opened a lot of doors for me in terms of being someone that has a vast set of skills versus a specialist in one particular area. Because particularly in music, probably more than any other playing field that I play in, like having a relationship where the artist trusts you and is comfortable with you being around is like paramount. So the less people they have coming and going, the better for them, because like it's such a personal thing being a musician, either in the studio or on the road. Like that's a really private, intimate space. So you've got to be really conscious of your impact in that area and being sort of fly on the wall or just a vibe that's like really allowing them to do what they do and you're not breaking that flow. So having that relationship is really huge. And then from I guess how I do my business, it's worked in my favor in that like they just want collaborators. They can collaborate with an ongoing basis and have less people coming and going. So that's worked really well. But like obviously content-wise, it's pretty different. Like there's a lot of so much need for vertical stuff versus horizontal stuff, which does my head in. I'm like, nothing looks better vertically than it does horizontally. Right. But, you know, just little things like that. So it's like, you know, we just need these short, sharp things to sort of tell the story. Like, how do you tell stories in like 8 to 10 seconds or 20 seconds? So it's harder in that regard, but it's a push and pull kind of thing. It's fun challenge. Being able to just do visuals and concentrate on making like things that just visually engage people and not have to dig too deep into a big narrative and story. But then at the same time, those things are really fun in a different way. So I kind of just like it because it's a time where everything's sort of changing really rapidly. Like obviously music videos, there's for a long time they've been quite formulaic because of low budget, so you can't have all these crazy wild things that you could probably creatively come up with. But so a lot of them became like 70% performance with some interesting visuals over the top. And like now, like if you only have to make a 20-second thing that just has to get people's attention with the music, well, you can go really weird and wacky with that. And that's a great field to be playing in because you're like, okay, well, we can just be as eccentric as that artist wants to go or that we want to go, and it's a playing field that I guess you can really explore further and deeper.
It's really leveled the playing field as well because now it comes, if the big budgets aren't going to be a barrier into getting seen, right? Like, you know, being on MTV, that used to be like a benchmark. I want to get on MTV, but now everyone's on the same platform. So it's a matter of then how do you create your brand as a musician, as an artist? How do you create your brand and reach your audience?
Totally.
So everyone is now confronting the same kind of challenges.
Yeah, and I really like that side of things. Is like I studied marketing before studying photography and did a bit of work in that branding kind of space. And like I love the challenge of trying to represent the artist brand. And so some artists are very like authentic and understated, and so my content becomes very fly on the wall, observational, intimate little discussions, those kind of things. And then other artists are really performative and play their character, and they become so for me then the content becomes leaning into that character, and it can be much more performative and more stylized. And so for me as a creator, that's really fun because you get to explore different worlds. And anytime you're working, that's why I love working with creatives so much, is you bounce off each other and get to a place that you would never be able to get to on your own, or you would never think of on your own, because you both keep just like bouncing off each other, leveling the ideas up. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. What if we add this? What if we do this? What if we flipped it and did it that way? And then you're like, that was almost cool, but what if we had this happening in the background at the same time? And so, you know, you don't get that when you're working with non-creatives as much. It's more just like a one-way dialogue of creativity, I guess. So,
yeah, I hear.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of working with creatives is just that back and forth. Yeah.
There would have been a fair bit of that doing Bromley.
Oh yeah, like he's the king of that. Like no one loves to just mess things up creatively more than him. Like it was such a joy to be in that world for so long and just experience what like one of the greatest creatives Australia has. Like, how does he go about it? What's his day-to-day like? Like, it's just, yeah, there's so many like lessons and just funny moments you take away from a character like that are really surprising from the outset. Like, I was lucky. I knew I'd spent some time with Bromley prior to starting that film, and so I knew kind of what his character and day-to-day was. But from the outside, I think a lot of people would never know what his creative process is like and how eccentric and wild it is.
It makes sense though. You're right. I didn't picture it to be quite like that, but after seeing it, it just made so much sense.
That's it. And that's kind of what you hope to achieve, because like, I think art, visual art, you know, I'm talking paintings, photography and that, but specifically paintings, it's so hard to know. We judge so much by the end result of the painting, and like I kind of liken it, you know, to how we judge people as well. Like we see someone, we see the way they're dressed, how they carry themselves, and we make a lot of assumptions of what that person is. But there's a whole backstory to that person. There's a whole backstory to where that painting came from, and the more we can dig into that and reveal those, like I think we're just better off as people and as humans and the way we interact. And so I think artists are really great subject matters because they're so personal in what they do. Like it's what ends up on a canvas is always so intimate, and there's such a backstory of every lived experience that artist has had up until that point, which on the surface often you can't see. So like peeling back those layers to show that meaning is something that I find endlessly fascinating.
A lot of the stuff of his work that I'm familiar with is what I see in his gallery. It's the more happy, joyful type art. And you're absolutely right, because you look at that art and it does make you feel a certain way. But what you don't know is how he had to arrive to that point. And it, like I was saying, man, it makes sense because you don't get it until you put it out there and you explain it. Because like I wasn't necessarily following his journey. I came in at a particular point. It's like, oh, this is Bromley's art. And, you know, when you say that we judge an art piece for the finished product, we don't look at the journey, but we also don't appreciate that it is now just a marker in time, and there's going to be more to come after that. There was a time before, and there's going to be a time after where things are going to evolve. You know, life experiences are going to influence and shape the work that is going to be done from that point on. So looking at Bromley and firstly understanding his eccentricities and layering that with I guess his the anxiety, being riddled with anxiety, and his upbringing, and looking at the past work and the evolution of it, it was beautiful to see where he's arrived at, because not everyone gets it.
No, most don't. And that's kind of why I wanted to make the film in the first place. Like, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that like he has made it out of like hell mentally, and made it to the other side in in a beautiful way where he's built this fantastic life. He's gone from a guy that really struggled as a young adolescent with a lot of mental health challenges and a feeling of like not belonging in the world and no place, and sort of a feeling of like hopelessness, like where would I ever find a meaningful life? But having this like really burning desire to have a meaningful life, right? Like he wanted life to be full. One of the things I admire most about his character is like this just stubborn, refusal to accept a life that's not like amazing. And that's probably where a lot of his challenges come from, is because like he feels so strongly about everything. And so, the highs are really high and the lows are really low. But he desperately doesn't want a life of going through the motions. So, what I love about his story is that despite all these things were going against him, it's just this stubborn resilience to say, I'm going to hang in this game and fight my way through and just keep smashing back at life until like I get through and find a life that lives up to the expectations of what I think life can be. Yeah. And they're the highest expectations that he has. And so it's beautiful because like by no means is his life now perfect and everything's rosy. Like he still faces challenges on a daily basis, but he's learnt how to manage them and he's learnt how to channel them into really productive, healthy ways. And everyone goes through those things to different degrees, He's on one of the higher degrees of what he experiences, but everyone can relate to that story and take pieces of what he's done and say, I can find my way through what I'm dealing with right now in a similar kind of way. Or like, I always want to tell stories that give people hope, or like that help someone with whatever they're going through feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's hard to understand and appreciate that when you're in it, when you're going through it. 100%. And it can feel pretty lonely as well. But we all kind of go through something similar one way or another.
Yeah, totally. It's all relatable. It's just, we experience it in different ways.
He's definitely on the extreme ends of both of that. And it took you, it was about 4 or 5 year journey putting that together? Yeah,
it was the first like feature-length documentary that I've directed, so there was a lot of learning along the way, but it was probably like about 4 years of shooting and then a year of post-production and all that fun stuff.
So it's just hanging out with him, with his family?
Totally. So like I kind of like very purposefully wanted it to be unstructured. Like documentaries, there's so many different styles and structures, right? Some of them are very scripted and, you've got, okay, here's the structure, here's the story, we need pieces to fill, this. Whereas I'm really drawn to more observational style documentaries where the story comes out in the shooting process and you're observing a subject and then you're like letting the story come from that and finding the story in a lot of ways. And that probably comes, I'm a portrait photographer and a documentary street photographer initially, and like that's kind of how I like to see the world and find my stories. So I very intentionally chose to shot it that way, which takes a longer process because you're letting it all unfold. And it kind of worked in my favor for a number of reasons, but like when I started it, like I definitely knew there was this really powerful story about this guy who is really resilient and has overcome a lot of mental challenges. But it was also like, I'm going to tell this story of this crazy creative artist who's so like interesting from a creative process point of view. But that's sort of like, the more I dug into it, the more it was a human story about just trying to live the best life you can and someone who's like really driven internally by the need to have love in his life, both giving and receiving of it. And it became a lot less about the artist and the art itself, which probably had I like not given myself time to explore that, I wouldn't have sort of found that deeper sort of level within the story.
Yeah, you got that towards the end, a lot of it at the start. So, all right, so as I was watching it, I was spending a lot of time trying to I guess, break it all down and trying to like, okay, how did Sean, why did he cut this in here? And, you know, why was this bit intentionally left towards the end? So firstly, it was a great job putting together something that felt cohesive while not linear.
Yeah.
And trying to explain a person who is incredibly eccentric. So you package that up nice.
Yeah.
I don't know how intentional all that was and whether or not that was something that was considered at the start or in the editing room. Right?
Definitely in the editing room. So, like, I mean, you have an idea along the way that, like, I knew I wanted the film to reflect what it's like being in his world. And that's, like, overwhelming, fast-paced, things are jumping around. So on a day, you might be, like, working on one particular thing. He's in the studio painting a bunch of children's work. But then 5 minutes later, 3 people arrive and he's out the front unloading trucks of vintage cars that he's bought, and he starts like painting them. And then 2 minutes later, he's in a car driving to a property that wants to look at because he's thinking of turning this old jail into an art museum. And so you're just a little bit all over the place. But you also have to tell a story that takes an audience on a journey. So you want it to reflect that sort of hectic lifestyle that they have, and have that sort of roller coaster ride. But definitely, like, I spent so much time with the editor just discussing, like, how do we take the audience on a journey that isn't linear? Like, it's a deep dive into his, I guess, psyche and experience of life. And so it's much harder because you have so many more options on how to tell the story. Like, when you've got a story that's more linear, you know, the backbone is often there, ready to go, because this is the order of proceedings. So it was a blessing and a curse because it gave us way more options, but it also gave us way more flexibility to drip feed, I guess, the pieces of the puzzle so that, you know, like, one of the things we tried to do early was, like, discuss his art, where his art sat in society, because a lot of the time you come to an artist and you see their art, and so you start making judgments. We wanted the audience to go on that journey, and we hear all the different opinions about his art, and then we slowly start unpacking what's driving all that. And that was all very conscious. But also it's really important to not give all the pieces of the puzzle away too early, because you got to, like, you got to get the audience on the journey of the character and start to feel connected to him, so that later on, when you reveal some of these more heavier things about family and certain dark moments that have driven a lot of what he is, you want to have that, like, aha moment of, like, I get now why this person is like this, or why they're doing that. So there's so many nights where you're like, you'd been editing all day and you're sitting around just discussing, like, what if we flip it all this way? And are we giving this away too early? You know, and there's lots of just back and forth on editing, and you're like, no, we've got to save that. And then it's like, I tip my hat off to editors because they're like absolute geniuses. Like, it's one of those things where, like, as the director, you're like, oh, let's move this scene to the front there. And they're like, but that then causes this 12 domino effect of, like, things. And you're like, oh, can we try it? You know? So then you try it. And
How much footage did you capture over the years?
Oh, like, it got to a point where you stop counting in hours because, like, you've got, you know, we shot over 100 days, and, like, most of those days were, like,
100 days worth of footage.
And, like, most of those days, like, you know, I'm 20 odd years younger than David, maybe more, maybe 25 years younger than David, and I struggled physically to keep up with his pace and, like, lifestyle. I'm like, I would go home exhausted after the end of each day because it's probably 12-hour days of just non-stop.
Did you stay
creating.
up there?
Yeah, a lot of the time I'd stay up there. A lot of the time I'd drive home. So you drive home from Daylesford just, like, 10 at night after, like, 12 hours of mayhem, get home, upload all the footage, back it all up, fall asleep, like, on the couch waiting for things to upload. So, yeah, ridiculously full-on lifestyle. And then you throw all the kids in the mix, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, you'd get to the, like, late in the day, it's like 5 o'clock, and I've just been following him around all day and like, exhausted. And, like, probably haven't got to ask any questions at that point because he's, like, too busy doing a million things. And then all the kids arrive, and they're all, like, jumping over everyone, and I'm like, oh, how do you... One day of this and I'm broken. Like, how do you...
He needs it. He needs it.
He does.
That's how he thrives.
That's the fascinating part about it. And but you learned yourself to love those days as well. Like, when you don't have them, you're like, oh, that was actually really fun. Like, I want those days now where you're like just 24/7 go, and it's hectic and you're doing a million things. People are coming and going. But yeah, man, it's such a beautiful world to be a part of. Like, his fearlessness in creating is just so, like, contagious, like, and just his, like, love for life is really contagious. Like, anytime people spend a day in the studio with him and that, it's just, you walk away like feeling like you can sort of do anything, like you can take on the world.
I completely got that just from watching that. Like, the energy that he puts out, there's so much vibrancy kind of coming out of his pores. There would have just been, even just being around it, and that would have just shifted the direction of things as you were capturing it all anyway. And there would have been so many things that you would have just learnt along the way, just learning and picking up from even his mannerisms and just how he conducts himself around other people. But there was so much that in the documentary, there was a lot of layers and a lot that you wanted to communicate in there. And even right from the jump, when you covered the criticism of his work, and I guess just how polarizing it is, and it really just got me thinking about art in general. How there are some people that will just be like, I don't like it.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, don't recall asking. You know,
totally.
Like, at someone at his level, and he has managed to, you know, get himself into a life position where it's like, I don't give a shit what you say. I'm going to do it anyway. But what did you learn from that about creative endeavors and people feeling as though that they just have, I mean, you do have the right and the license to not like it, but being an advocate to push that narrative, right? And to kind of like almost tarnish the work. Like, what's the driver? What's the motivation behind that?
Yeah. And, like, that's something we spent so much time discussing. And I learnt lots just as a creative myself about his approach to that, because it's a common thing, right? Like, show me one creative that hasn't experienced anxiety or, like, worried about how's this piece of art going to be received, or how's it going to be judged, or am I doing it right? All those kind of things. And he just doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff. And, like, definitely as a younger man, he's the first to say, yeah, I got caught up in worrying about that. But he's now in this sort of much wiser place where, you know, so like one scene that never made the film, but I always really liked it, was a scene where I was kind of like asking him about, okay, what does success for you look like? Looking back at your life as an artist, blah, 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 what's success mean? And he kind of like, he said, success is just being in the game, still in the game. And he said, like, winning the game is irrelevant. It's being in the game for the rest of your life is what matters. And so for me, I took sort of that as being like, it's the process of living every day this creative life that you want to live. You've won. Like, he said, the things that sometimes I thought were some of my greatest works flopped. And some of the things that I thought, oh, that wasn't my best, were big commercial successes. And you're always going to have people that, you know, there's people's jobs. So what's their motivation? I mean, there's people out there that love the arts, but don't have it within them to necessarily create, or that drive to create. So writing about it is like the next best thing. I don't know what... We all like to talk about the things we're fascinated in, and there's a lot of people that do that for a living. But, you know, we were in a Q&A once and someone asked David, like, were you okay that Sean put all those critics in the film? And he's like, I'm alive. I'm married to the love of my life. I've got all these beautiful kids. like a critic's not going to dent my happiness. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, and I think that's definitely an attitude that like I took away, because like there's certainly making your first film as a director, you often get yourself caught up going, oh, you know, how's it going to be received? What, and you're conscious of putting this film out there and what's going to be good, what's going to be like the right way to do it, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so definitely from him, I learned like that stuff doesn't matter. Like the fun and the real purpose of it all is the making of it.
Yeah.
And like we had so much, so there was certainly times where I sort of had to like almost talk to myself and say, get back to just enjoying doing it. The rest will take care of itself. Like the fun is in just making it, you know.
I ask a lot of guests, and even when I'm catching up with other creatives, that question of what does success look like for you? A lot of people they struggle to answer that.
Yeah.
I don't think people really given that question enough energy and enough thought.
Well, it evolves. So it's like, I think a lot of people don't, you know, that classic saying like, I wish I knew now or wish I knew then what I know now. Like a lot of people, I think it takes to the end of or late in your career to really understand that, because like, and I've gone through the same things where starting out, you just want to, success is like people just noticing your work and saying, that looks cool, man. Like that's success. And then it becomes, okay, how do I make money out of it? And so you're like, and then success becomes, how much money am I making out of it? Or, you know, how many paid jobs am I getting? Or what's my work selling for? Any of those kind of things becomes then your success. And then you're like, okay, well, that's going well. Why am I like, what's missing? Like something's still not, I'm not like all the way loving creating or whatever it is. And so like, I think you get, like for me, I've sort of certainly got to a point now where like success is not, money's a very low like evaluator of success for me. It's more, what experiences am I having? What relationships have I built? What interactions with like people that just like fill me up with life and like enthusiasm? Like what experiences, what relationships am I having there? Like it's about doing things that just every day make you know, want to get up excited and can't wait to work on this project, or can't wait to go and shoot with this person, or like that's like, so to me, like that's now success for me is, am I filling my cup with lots of those kind of experiences? Because that's so much more fulfilling than, oh yeah, I made this much money a month. And obviously you've got to make money to live, and that's all really valid as well. But like, it's certainly something I've noticed with Bromley, the more you put into making the experience and the creating and the relationship connection with other people, the focus, the money comes anyway.
Yeah.
Like you'll start making the best stuff that you've made.
Yeah. The money is a byproduct of the rest of it. If you put that energy towards finding that purpose and that fulfillment, I kind of feel as though that the money part of it's there to facilitate that part of your life, right? So if you are doing the right thing and doing it the right way, you will find a way, or I don't know, it probably sounds a bit wanky, but the universe is a way of facilitating that for you. It'll
100%.
present opportunities to make sure that will keep going. So I know I completely understand. Like I resonate with that whole, the success evolving as you go. For sure, very early on as a creative, you want validation. Like you're now taking that leap of faith and you think, am I doing the right thing? And the only metric that you have isn't whether or not you feel it right here, is if you're being accepted by the community. That is the marker of success. I want people to see my work and I want to get recognition for it. And then, yeah, for sure, then money becomes a driver, because like, shit, I need to make a living out of this. And over time, it starts making its way down the priorities when you're comfortable enough to then, I guess, just step out of that and then just step into your own and just, I don't know, like I guess the older you get, the less you give a shit about other things and what people have to say.
Totally. And it's really hard to expedite that process.
Yeah, you're right.
So like often, you know, some of like it might be something like, I'm sure that my time in Bromley's world expedited that process for me, having access to this like just brilliant creative mind, you know, or like big life things, losing people you love often speeds up that process, or, you know, major illnesses or things like that where life sort of gets threatened, that you reevaluate what really matters, or like, you know, okay, climbing that like financial success is actually not a waste of time, but it can really distract you from what actually makes you happy.
For some people, that there is nothing really, well, I guess that they just haven't given the energy to thinking what it is that they get fulfillment from. And so where they get, I guess, the dopamine hit is from acquiring stuff and buying things and collecting things, hoarding money, and using that as a metric of success, right? Like
Totally.
It's a number that that there's just clocking up, and it's like, look how successful I am. But you know, like, what are you going to do with that? Like, it's you're working to increase that metric, but that's your only measure of it. And I don't know, it's
a vicious cycle that like every creative goes on, is trying to figure out all that stuff, like, and also just figuring out, like, I'm certainly share some similar traits to Bromley in terms of like being a really active mind that never stops, easily becoming obsessed with my work, and like, as soon as you finish one thing, like, what's next? We've got to do the next thing that's bigger. We've got to go, like, constantly trying to get to that next rung, and that can be really dangerous as well. It's funny because I spent a lot of time trying to understand, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because it can overtake your personal life. It can often mean you're so driven from a work perspective that family can take second place sometimes, or your partner, or if you've got kids, whatever it is. And you wrestle with, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And often you sit in different camps. And I think I've got better at understanding that, like, work's not everything, but understanding as well that like one of my fears was like, I find it hard sometimes to like stop and celebrate the wins, or like enjoy, like, the natural inclination is to not enjoy the journey, or like, you know, make myself enjoy the journey, but just be like trying to get the win, like trying to get the job done, trying to like do the best thing you can, and then like straight on to the next thing, right? And so again, it's something I've learned from David, but a lot of different creatives that I've worked with, is like stop and enjoy the creating part of it in the moment, and like that's such a huge thing.
That's something that's underestimated, man, and for
huge,
sure,
yeah.
You know, the completion of a job, like when you're working on something, you're working to complete it, but then as soon as you complete it, it doesn't feel nice. Right?
No,
like,
it feels like there's pressure to
like,
now.
Shit, now I've got to and
do
then
the next.
You got to get on to the next thing, and then like that whole starting a new project, you firstly go through this wave of like, oh, fuck, this is just monumental. And then as soon as the momentum starts to pick up, that's when you start to feel invigorated. That's the place that you always want to stay at. So
totally.
It is like finishing a project, but just to get back into that space. And I think that is a cycle that we get caught up
and
in.
like the last thing I was thinking, like more recently, I was like, I don't want to be one of those creatives that's obsessive all the time and never sort of stop, and then at the end of your life you're sort of like, well, what was it all for? You know, like, and you sort of like put your head up at the end of it all, and life's passed you by type thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I am, but I think the fact that I'm always conscious of not being that is what makes me not that, if you know what I mean. So like, yeah, I put a lot of time into making sure that, you know, my head's not up my own ass, for lack of a better term, you know, that I'm spending time with those around me, but I'm also like creating in a very present kind of way and enjoying each day doing it.
Great.
Having fun, stopping when I need to, learning to put things in place to force me to stop. Like, my wife is a photographer as well, and we work a lot together on all my projects. You know, like a massive thing for us is just to get away and travel overseas and just get lost in a foreign country like every 6-12 months. It's just like that's often some of the only way I can detach and just be completely in it, literally in another world, not thinking about all the things that can occupy or take over your brain, because it's so hard to switch off your brain sometimes, at least for me and a lot of creatives I know. That's like the biggest challenge, right? Is how do you like give yourself a break?
I don't know if you necessarily need to give yourself a break. I think it's a matter of then just reframing things a little bit differently, right? Like
100%.
Like, you know, instead of having to think about work and being pragmatic about all the steps and the processes, everything that you're doing is going to be contributing to your work one way or another. You know, so if every experience that you have, so when you're going overseas, you're taking in all this stimulus, you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable position of just being in unfamiliar territory, and that's shifting so much in you. Just culturally, you're experiencing something new, eating different food, speaking a different language, just breathing in different air. That is doing work in you, which is going to be coming out through your work. So you're never really off. But I think it's just a matter of how you want to appreciate the day-to-day and understanding that whatever it is that you're currently in, like right now, sitting here in this chair, having this conversation, that's already going to change the way that I view life when I step out the door later on. You know, like all these interactions.
I guess for me, that traveling is stripping away all the distractions from taking in all that stuff. Because we're still experiencing and taking in everything that's around us constantly, but it's often distracted with, you know, I've got to pick this up on the way home. I've got this meeting tonight. You know, you've got all these things that like are sort of like stopping you from fully just taking it all in. And so for me, traveling is like, whenever I travel, I just roam the streets with a camera and just do street photography. And that's like a really refueling thing for me. It's something I love to do. That's why I got into photography in the first place. And it just fills me up creatively and mentally. And I guess like, what I've learned is that I do need some of those things to help me switch off from, I guess, the business side of whatever it is I'm doing, which has been really valuable. And like you kind of just said, is like, I've learned that to accept that that's just who I am, and that's a good thing, that I'm this very driven, often obsessed person that loves what I do, and I'm always going to be chasing that next thing. And that's kind of, while that you can let that overwhelm you and sort of drown you a bit, but as long as you have those things put around you and good people around you, and you're making smart decisions on what you're working on, then that's a healthy thing. And that's a, like, obsession can be a really healthy tool. You can let it be unhealthy, but when you've got the right sort of steps in place,
man,
it's a great, man. Like, you know, embrace it. Like Kobe, you know, all those greats. Like, look at every great, you know, you try and take a little bit of them, and you know, he made peace a long time with his sort of obsessive nature.
Yeah, and he changed quite a fair bit after he stepped away from the game.
Totally.
Well. But if you're going to take anything away, just take a little bit away from him. I think like he is a good example of like, ooh, that's a bit much. That's obsessive. But I think it's just the obsessive part of it could just be channeled and brought into looking at things more holistically, right? Like, I don't know about you, but there'll be times where I probably feel a bit of anxiety because there are things that I want to accomplish, even if it comes down to I need to get this done by this week, by today. And I say that I need to do this before lunch. And when it doesn't, I'm like, fuck. And then it starts to eat away at me. And then that energy starts permeating other parts of my life, right? So it's like all that shit is self-imposed.
Totally.
Right? So then the way my approach was then to be, all right, look, as someone who is creating things, whether it be this podcast or design or art, how do I bring that into my life? Because my home life is equally important, if not more important. And In terms of an influence, probably the biggest influencer. The people around me, my immediate family, the conversations I have, they are the most important things, the most influential things. So give them that same sort of energy and make room for those as well, because they are just as important, if not more so, than that arbitrary deadline that I've just decided that I want to hit. So then it's like trying to level things out and find this balance, like family time, exercise, run, whatever it may be. Everything needs to have that level of energy put into it, and then it all kind of sits harmoniously. That is the strategy. Doesn't always work.
I was going to say, how do you do that? Can you give me some tips?
Oh man, every day you just got to change the ingredients up, because it doesn't always work. It's like, okay, today I spent too much time doing this. Tomorrow I've got to kind of like level it out, and you just.
I kind of see it like those old school scales. Things are getting too heavy on this side. You got to top it up, and then. Yeah.
So sometimes you have no other choice but to dedicate more energy towards work, right? Like you just need to push this thing out. But it's all arbitrary. It's all just timelines and shit that you decided to do. And, like you established that it's never gonna end. It's just a process that's always gonna be ongoing. And the next one is gonna come around. As soon as this one's done, the next one's gonna come around, whether it be today, tomorrow, whatever it may be. As soon as you're done with this, the next one's gonna come around anyway.
Totally. And it is really hard, especially like my wife works with me on a lot of these things, right? So it's like there's literally no separation between that family situation, work. It's all the same thing. And again, like I learn a truckload off the Bromleys in that world, because there's no separation, They're
even doing it all in the same place.
100%. The amount of times I'd be filming David at, 10 at night, he's painting in their living room at home because it's middle of winter and the studio's got too cold, so there's a heater at home, and there's like kids around and they've just finished having dinner and Yugi's putting the kids down, and then she's coming to help with certain, and it's like the first thing was like it's okay for that to all be mixed in together. That was my first learning, because like a lot of the time you're conscious of yourself, like, I don't want to like be always making laugh about work, and you can fight it too much sometimes. But when your partner is working with you, and so one was accepting like, it's all good for these things to be all intermersed, because ultimately it is what you do. Like everything you do is part of your work, and they're all interlinked, whether you like it or not. Yeah. So you can fight it, or you can accept it and then work within it in a way that suits you all. Certainly, like my wife would probably say, the balance is not 100% right all the time, but she has a lot of fun and joins in I guess I always joke, she joins in all the fun projects, and that way we're always doing the fun stuff together. And she enjoys growing us as a team as much as I do. So, I learn a lot from also just the way that the Bromleys interact with each other. And I think that's a huge thing when you have to work with your partner, is how you communicate, how you celebrate each other. Like they're great examples, because they even self-confess sometimes we're our own biggest cheerleaders. And so David is always going out of his way to tell everyone who's around how amazing Yugi is, and vice versa. And I think that's a really good lesson, in that first and foremost, you must celebrate your partner, and that has to be number one. And in doing that, it allows you to work together in a really sort of fulfilling way.
For sure. I mean, you've got to have that kind of dynamic in that relationship where you are going to be each other's greatest supporter, but also be willing to hold them accountable to getting shit done, right? Like there's no slouching in this, and you want that. You want the best out of the person and the people around you. You want the best for them, and if you've chosen a life partner, you want to go on this journey with them, and it's about bringing your best and them bringing their best together and creating something pretty awesome.
100%. It's back to what we talked about at the start of working with creatives, and
Yeah.
You know, there's a Bruce Springsteen saying that I love where he talks about, you know, the magic to rock and roll and life is when 1 + 1 = 3. So the sum of the parts being greater than the individual pieces. So, and I kind of liken that both to who you work with creatively, or who are those like special relationships that you have, ongoing clients that are really personal and creative, but also with your partner. You know, so when there's the two of you together, you can get to a place that either of you individually could never get to.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of, you know, and we work with a lot of couples that, you know, both in the music world, in the arts, like the Bromleys and several others. And it's just such a beautiful way to work when it works, because it's like, it's just an all-in immersive experience.
Yeah, yeah. And look, man, I have no issues with mixing work and family. Like with my wife, her business, you know, I'm always helping her with the branding side of things, the design.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she is holistic counselor. So there would be times when I'll be bouncing off ideas with her, asking her, like, look, this is the situation with, you know, this particular guest. This is their journey, this and this. And she's able to help me kind of like peel back the layers and understand what's going on. And, you know, we just have those conversations that helps me better understand what I'm going through. And then that way I can better communicate with the guest. And there's just layers to it all. And you know, there's a lot of overlap, I suppose, in the way that we think, the way that we feel and what we believe in. It just so happens that we're working on independent things, but are comfortable enough to share ideas. And
that's similar to us, like, and it sounds like what you've got's really good in that the overlap is kind of like the North Star. It's like you're both paddling to the same end result, but the way you guys paddle is different, which is great because you challenge each other on the way to get there, but you're both going to the same journey. And that's the same for us. Like my wife's she's a photographer and filmmaker as well, but she's very different in how she goes about it, both technically and just what excites her and stuff like that.
You would hope so.
Which is great.
It gives you opportunities to try new things yourself and to learn.
Yeah, and it's often quite funny. Like you know, it's never more evident than when we travel and do street photography, right? Like because we're going to the same places, but then you look at the shots we both take and they're really different. But we're both looking at the same thing, and we're both maybe excited by the same thing because we've taken an image of it, but they're totally different.
That's the cool thing about the camera. It's an extension of yourself, right? Like it's capturing something that you're seeing, and what you're seeing is going to be backed by all the different experiences that you've had, and then same for her.
100%.
The outcome is completely different. It's sort of like, you know, when you're going into one of those the sipping. You know, when people are painting with wine, they go on those classes. What are they called?
The paint and sip. Or
When they're doing one of those things, and they're looking at the same thing, right? The same bowl of fruit, and somehow when you're looking at all the different works when they're all done, they couldn't be more different.
Totally.
You know, like
it's such an. I learned that I went through a breakup like I don't know years ago, like 10 years ago or something, and coincided with when I had a month in New Zealand for work, and I was taking all these photos. And I remember years later looking back at these photos and going, wow, all these photos are of isolated figures, very like lonely looking images. And I'd just broken up with someone and was alone in New Zealand. And I was like, it's amazing how much that has come through in the visuals but it's totally subconscious. Like I wasn't intentionally doing all that, but all the images had this cold sort of like stark loneliness to it. And I was like, that's awesome that this is all happening without me knowing. And it's probably happening on all my images. It was just more obvious at that time. And so you're 100% right. And it's the things that excite you that capture your attention that you decide to
it's just
take
whatever
a shot
state that you're in. There was this, do you know Tony Robbins? So he was on Theo Von's podcast. There was a clip that's been going around of him he was doing this this experiment or this activity with Theo, and I was actually talking to my son about it this morning, where he said, look around the room and look for things that are red. And he was looking for all the red things around the room, and asked him for another color, and then then he said that, all right, now, all the things that are red, did you kind of also throw in some burgundy and some pink? He's like, yeah. He said, what you're looking for, you will find, right? So if you're looking for red, you're also now seeing maroon, you're seeing the pinks. So it's a matter of what you're putting out is what you're going to be getting back.
100%. It's so fascinating. That's why I love street photography so much. It just changes the way you see things, and it doesn't maybe change it, but it reveals to you the way you see things.
Yeah.
Because you can actually see it in an end result, and you're like, oh, I was so focused on this particular type of subject at that time because I was so fascinated by it. Or, you know, in Japan, it was like all these just wild dress sense and interesting head. Like I was just really interested in that at the time. But it does then fuel, like a series that I've been doing for years is on basketball rings, right? Just taking photos of basketball rings everywhere I go. I've done hundreds in Australia and a bunch all around the world. But like the more I did it, the more that everywhere I go, I could not miss one. Like I'd drive past the street and I'm like subconsciously just out of the corner of my eye saw a basketball ring, and you'd go back and sure enough there was one. And my wife would be like, "How the hell did you see that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I think I've just trained myself to look to see these things now."
Yeah.
But similarly, like what I love about a lot of basketball rings is how they reveal like the culture of the area, just the way the rings are put together, where they're placed, all these kind of things. But then in looking for those and evaluating that, I start seeing all these other things that are similar. So it might not be a basketball ring, but like a letterbox. You look at all different letterboxes in different countries, areas, and they tell a story about that area just from one single item.
That's true.
But you start training yourself subconsciously.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
Like I think that that is when you're not taking things for granted as well. When you're able to observe something and just find wonderment in that. You know, with the basketball rings, when I see a basketball ring and it's got a net, straight away I'm like, wow, look at this posh area.
Exactly.
Like, my God, how nice are the people living around here.
Totally.
They have so much respect for their community and for their environment.
Or it's got the fold-out rebounder underneath that, you know.
I've never seen that. Are you serious?
Yeah. So the person shooting, it sort of shoots the ball back to them.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
You know, you're flying high if you've got one of them.
Oh, wow. The luxury.
Whereas it's the one where the ring's like nailed onto like a tin metal backboard, you know, that you're like, a dad's just like spent his Sunday afternoon putting this together and making it.
Seriously read into it a lot.
It is. And it's like when you put a whole series of them together, you're just like, oh, that's like, it becomes really obvious.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. And then I'm like, well, what other items are out there like that?
I wonder when you were saying like with your photography, how it reveals who you are at that moment. With Bromley, you can see his evolution and how he went through different stages and how his work has evolved. And a lot of that is more revealed towards the end when, you know, especially that scene where he's there flicking through his archives and it's juxtaposed with him also then creating his new works. And you can see that contrast there. Like him using art as an outlet, because I used to paint a lot, but it was also at a time that I was, you know, going through that angst. So what that helped me do was channel it, but at the same time, it always kept me in that space. So I didn't have a healthy relationship with creating art.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was healthy, but it just didn't make me happy.
Yeah.
So I kind of left it. But it was great to see how with him and a lot of artists that they're able to then use that as their channel and use that as the way of expressing themselves and to also get themselves out of the state that they don't want to be in.
Totally. And like, it's funny, like the amount of fun he has in the studio, like it's like a kid finger painting in class, like, and there's paint going everywhere. Like it's no different. And he's a massive one in trying to be like, live his life like a kid. You know, and he talks about it all the time. And he's like, I often like try to channel what would my 12-year-old self do in this situation. And like, it's that mental, and I guess what he's talking about there is kids just do what makes them happy, right? And there's no bigger thinking. Like, they don't let their head get in the way of a good idea by going, well, is this going to be, they just do instinctively what's going to make them happy. And there's so much to be learnt from that. But like, yeah.
We lose a lot. We lose so much of that sense of creativity as we grow older. As soon as we start learning, I can't do this because I've got to go to work, or, I have all these other adult responsibilities that at the end of the day, they probably don't mean as much, or they're not as important as you think that they are. And having that wonderment, that childlike wonderment, like, firstly, like, speaking with Lennox, my oldest son, like, he doesn't have a concept of time, right? So, like, he knows that he's got to get to school at this particular time, but he doesn't know what that really means. And it's like, dude, how wonderful is it for you to not have a concept of time? You don't understand that you have to be here to, to do this, and then later on you got to do that. For you, it's just like right now. All you have is now, and what am I doing right this moment? And
all these like things that society teaches you, even time is like a construct that is
exactly
taught to you as you get older. Okay, well, this is what, how much time you have for this, and this. Whereas a kid will just go until they drop, right? Do you know the artist Leadbeater?
Sounds familiar. Go on.
He was also in graphic design. He's a brilliant artist, but I talk to him a lot because he's interesting because he comes from a graphic background, graphic design, which is obviously very structured, and that, whereas in his art, he tries to be as loose and as unstructured as possible. And he talks about trying to create like a child, and he's like, there's this awesome time where children don't know what size a leg or an arm should be. Like, it's all out of proportion. But then we get taught that leg's a bit too long, like, it's out of proportion. And you start creating with all these like perceptions of what things should be. But getting back to that place of creating where there's no perception of what it should be, and it's just whatever you want it to be.
There's no rules. We put up these arbitrary rules.
The dream. Yeah. It's so interesting. I think you'd dig his work. But yeah, and Bromley's the king of that in the studio. It's so fascinating to watch. And like what you were talking about, where I think as much as anything, like the physical act of painting is really important for him to get a lot of that energy and that, because his mind races so much. There's a lot of pent up energy, and there was somewhat. Dave was talking to this like a behavioral psychologist who said, the human brain on average has, and I don't know what the number was, but like say it was like 10,000 thoughts a day. He's like, David, I think yours has 250,000 thoughts a day. Like, that's how his brain kind of works. And so the act of a lot of the time he's like, I don't care what I make. I just need to make something to get this all out. And he'll paint over it the next day. Which I'm like, you just get a new canvas, paint a new, like, you've just made that. And he's like, I just got to...
It's the process.
Yeah, I don't care about the end result so much. A lot of the time he'll go, I'll put colours together that I think are no good just to see what happens, because that might lead to something interesting. Putting him intentionally doing something wrong can lead to...
Well, that is that childlike wonderment, right? Because like there are so many people and like myself, or so many things that we will do, rather so many things that we won't do because there's a fear or some inclination that we think it's not going to work out. It's like, well, just do it.
Totally.
Just see.
Yeah. And I think the more we do it, more success we have, the more those fears become realer, because, okay, well, you're now known for doing this particular work, or you've now made one thing that's really good, so you become a bit more conservative because you don't want to like mess with that, or like, oh, I'm known for this type of work, so I better do more of that. Like, fuck all that shit. Like,
just do whatever you want.
Exactly. But it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah. But then the more of that experimentation that you do, and then when you come out of the other side making, tons of mistakes, then you realize that it's not that big a deal. You can continue making the mistakes because of the thousands of attempts. If there's one thing that just comes out that works from that feels like, wow, that's incredible. Let's run with that a little bit until you run into more mistakes and like, okay, cool, those ones didn't work. Let's just run in this direction.
Mistakes are great, and I think too often people are scared to make mistakes, or like they stew on an idea until they get it to a point where they think it's perfect, and it's like there's no like a great saying of Bromley's is like perfectionism is the enemy of outcome, and I so believe in that. Like it's so much better to just make mistakes and do things and learn on, like that's where you learn, right? Like is the doing of it and not the thinking about it. It's like doing something and you're like, okay, well that photo shoot that I did, we got a couple of good photos out of it, but like I wish I did it this way now that I've done it. And you're like, so then you go and do it that way next time and you're like, okay, well we've got even more good photos out of it this time, but I wish I did this. And so you just keep building and building, and it's like that's a real big lesson to learn, is that like you learn by doing, and it's like get out of your own head and just let it happen and learn by doing. And like it's the more you can like do something instinctively and let that be the driver and not like the less your head's involved in the process, the better.
Especially with art, man, when a lot of it's just meant to be intuitive. And what would even constitute a mistake in art? Like, what does that even
That's
mean?
a whole funny discussion itself. Like, yeah, evaluating art is like, I understand the role of art critics and all that kind of stuff, but it's sort of a futile exercise, right? Like pointless, because
I don't understand.
Like
what are you criticizing? And I think that you had said that there are people that are naysayers when it comes to Bromley's art in particular, but then there's also going to be people that when they're buying his art and getting a hold of it and just feeling that joy of having a Bromley piece, like who gives a shit what the negative?
Yeah, who makes one more right than the other? Like, art is the most subjective thing in the world.
Completely.
Like, but it's also irrelevant. It's like whether you think it's good or bad.
Yeah,
it's like there's 10 million other people. You know, it's like you interact with the stuff that you like. Other people interact with the stuff they like. But I mean, I understand people need, like, there's a role in society for art critics and that, and we all need the nemesis to shine a light on the hero, I guess.
Maybe, but it's almost like the work's not being catered for them. No. That it's like no one asked you. But thanks for sharing.
It's quite funny. Like I remember like interviewing one of the people for the Bromley film, and they were a naysayer, a fellow artist that didn't like his work. She just said, and it didn't make the film, but she's like, oh, he just must be so bored in the studio. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, if you only knew how much fun he has every day and how like wildly creative and funny. Like, it's just laughable how wrong you are.
They just don't get it. It's just a different wavelength.
And it's fine. Like, not everyone has to get it. And people like to give their opinion, so that's fine as well. But like, it's a valuable lesson for all creatives, is to like just how ludicrous that side of things are. Not just in the arts, like in the film world, it's no different. Like, you'll have people that love your film, you'll have people that don't. And it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to please everyone, will please no one, and two, worrying about that sort of stuff. Like, you
can't cater for that.
No, it's stupid. Like, I love the way Woody Allen's like never attends a single award function or reads a single piece of press about any of his movies. It's just like they're all, early in his career he had a big successful movie and read them all, and they were all polar opposites. He's like, what's the point? Like, some of them think I'm a genius, some of them think I'm an idiot. Like, it's all useless. Like,
sometimes it's
I should just go back and make my next film. Like, and that's the right approach, I think. Like, let them do all that sort of shit, and we'll just keep making stuff.
Yeah, man, you would have seriously that experience, those years, to what you were saying. Just how you use or unintentionally or intentionally use that as that moment, those years with Bromley, to help accelerate your growth. I mean, you probably wouldn't even consider that at the time, but it most certainly did.
Oh, 100%.
And what a gift to have had.
Yeah. And like, not just as a creative, just as in life. Like, you know,
That's the same thing.
He's such, same thing. But like, he's lived like a lot of lives, you know, like there's so much to learn about what really matters, how to value, you know, what I love about him, that again is life, but it's also the way he works, is how important, more than anything, is his interaction with that person. So whether it's a collaboration or, you know, the concept of like making money out of it or anything like that is the last thing that's ever considered. It's like, does this person excite me? Am I, you know, loving what they're bringing to the table? Do they challenge me in a way? Like all those kind of things. I love the fact that he places at the very top of his decision making, what's my experience going to be like doing this? Am I going to have fun? Is this going to be a lot of fun? Great, we're doing it. It's going to make me money, who cares? Like buying a jail and spending millions of dollars filling it with art, and like that was never going to be a money-making thing for them. But like, he's like, I'm going to have so much fun doing this. Yeah. And he did. And like, he's like that in all facets of his life. And I think like, but he's also like, coupled with that is he's very open and giving. So like when someone comes in, he's like, I'm going to give all of myself here and just be open. And if we connect, we connect. If not, I'll keep doing that to the next person until we connect and we're all vibing. Whereas a lot of people are very guarded and they don't want to, you know, open their truest self up. And
it's
like,
hard. Vulnerability is a difficult one.
It's very difficult. But that's where your greatest connections come from, is when you're both vulnerable and open. You see the real people. Yeah. You know, you show your real self and you see their real self, and then that's the most
reciprocate.
Like, brilliant way of and at least from my experience, anytime you're vulnerable, it pays off tenfold. You know, you never regret it.
Yeah. What I love is that you got to spend time with David Bromley. He has shared his experiences, has shaped and shifted you as an artist, created an art piece that you put it out there that's going to affect other creators and other artists. We're spending the time talking about it on this episode that other people are going to hear, and it's going to affect them. There's just that relationship of creating that positive, that creative ripple effect that you're putting it out, and you know, it just permeates through culture, and it has this way of subtly shaping how we create and how we do art and how our culture will start to take form. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's been such a brilliant process. Like, I feel so lucky to have been part of that project. And just like things you don't expect along the way, like, you know, we spent, I don't know, a couple of months like going to all the film festivals around Australia and showing screenings and all those kind of things. And you get to talk to everyone after the movie, and they're all sharing these like deeply personal stories, whether it's their connection to a parent, you know, a loved one who's really struggled with mental health. They share these, like, it shocked me just how much of an impact the film had on a lot of people, in a really positive way. And so for those people to share it, and like certainly with David and Yugi, it happened even tenfold. Like every screening, they would have people lining up to speak with them and just tell them how moved they were and how much it changed the way they understand their loved ones, and maybe what some of the stuff they're going through are, and why they are the way they are. And that's like that gift that you don't expect, that you're just like, oh man, that's like a really beautiful byproduct of this great experience we had, is that it's then passed on to all these other people that are like,
but it's almost
taking it with them and running. It is the point, but it's not the point when you create it.
Yeah.
Like when you're creating it, you're just creating it to do what feels right at the time, right? Like, I want to tell this story. This is a lot of fun to do. I want to figure out how to tell this story. That's all you're trying to do. You're not thinking like, you know, I want these people to feel like this after you hope that happens, but like, I think you run yourself into a trap if you're thinking about that stuff during the creative process.
You absolutely do, because then it comes through in the work and you're like, that's bullshit.
That's when it feels like one of the things that like I'm most proud of with this film is how many people have come up to me afterwards and said, that just felt so authentic, so real and so vulnerable. And I was like, wow, that's like the perfect, like that's the dream feedback. But also we were really conscious in not censoring anything along the way and not like faking anything, like just keeping it, every part of the process, whether it was the way I recorded, the questions we asked, how we recorded, how we edited, all that was like, let's make it as real as possible every step of the way. And I think like the fact that that's reflected in a really honest, open, vulnerable film that people can see is not bullshit. You know, David is just so openly himself in the film, which is a beautiful thing. That's kind of what I'm most proud of, because it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to manipulate a certain thing or present a certain thing that's your creation, whereas it's like nothing will be more impactful than the real truth, you know?
Yeah, this authenticity.
So that's been a beautiful like byproduct of, again, first time sort of directing my own film and going through that whole process of, you know, film festivals and talking to audiences and all that kind of thing. That's been a real pleasant surprise.
So they can catch Bromley on Stan?
Bromley, it's available for rent on Apple TV, YouTube, Amazon.
Amazon, that was the one.
It's also on DocPlay, which is a documentary streaming service. So there's a few different ways you can watch it. Awesome.
I highly recommend it. It was inspiring, enlightening. It was just beautiful, man. I felt light after watching it. And there was so much of it that resonated with me. And it was great to be able to connect with an artist who I was familiar with, just didn't know much about him. I really, really enjoyed it, man. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think what I'm proud of with that film is that there's sort of something for everyone. It's not, you don't have to be a lover of the arts. You don't even have to know who David Bromley is. It's more of a life story of just trying to live the best life you can, which we're all trying to do. And there's something in there for everyone. There's a lot about family and just love and you know, how we manage all that relationships and loss of loved ones. And so I think there's something in there for everyone, which is kind of what you want out of a film.
For sure. Where can people connect with you, see your work?
So the usual kind of places. I'm on Instagram. SMCD Photography is the best place to get me. I have a website, but I haven't updated it in about 3 years. So that's way on the to-do list. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I share most of my stuff through there.
Mate, thank you so much for the chat, dude. And thanks again for putting Bromley out and putting that together. It was, it changed the way I view art, and it gave a very holistic take on how it should be approached.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for what you do. Like, I think another reason I made that film was like, I just don't think we celebrate our creatives culturally as much as we should.
We don't.
And that's what you're doing with your podcast, which I love, and is another great thing, a gift that you're giving, you know, to this community. So thank you. And yeah, let's both keep doing it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, keep this one going.
Pleasure, man.